Okay, so today is the 30th Thursday, which means it's time for Satanic Bible Study. In this case, we're going to be going over the last talk with Mike that I had. I did want to have more, but as I'll explain here in a second, I tried to corner him. A little bit more vicious than I probably should have been. Like, it was a polite conversation, however. And I know I made a mention to this book before, but I just want to, throw it out there that this is where I got the information from that I used. I'm about to go over, so I want to give credit where credit's due. I read the book from front to back while I was there. I mean, I had to have something to do to keep the balance. But yeah, what I'm referring to is, like, I've went through, let me see what chapter this is. I don't want to be misinformative here. I'm not sure what chapter, but yeah, buy the book and you'll find it on your own. I highly recommend, Christian or not, buy this book and read it. It is worth the read. But anyhow, I just wanted to give credit that this is where I got my list of passages that I used to corner him. I just kind of hand-picked, and you'll see which ones I picked out. And I wanted to do more, but you'll see what happened here in a second. Okay, so let's get to the main point here. So, if I knew that this was going to be the last time I was going to be able to, try to corner Mike, I might have done a different approach. But anyhow, so this will be with Talks with Mike. And I start off, I know I've already shown some of these a few times already, but bears repeating to make a point where I was doing with this. So I started off talking about on Mathew, let's see here, I think it was chapter 5. This isn't Mathew. Just a moment here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I kind of pre-set these up. Pain in the ass to get to. Sorry for all the terrible camera angles. Anyhow, so I started off, as you can see on the very top. I had this pre-organized to pin him on some points. So the first thing I did is I go to Matthew chapter 5, and then I go to passage 18. And I pointed this out before. You can see where I've already got the dots here. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth, not one jot or tittle in this, one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. It's hard to read because it's such a weird way that they wrote back then, I guess. King James Version might have something to do with that. So anyhow, the reason why I started off with this is because I'm like, okay, so I told him, everybody says, well, that's the Old Testament, right? And they said, we're supposed to read the New Testament. And I'm like, well, even Jesus said not to, change a tittle or tot. And for some dumb reason, I didn't write down what he had said, but he tried to be over technical with the term of a tittle and make sure I say this right. Not one tittle shall change, not one jot or a tittle. So he tried to get technical and try to say, like, I really wish I had wrote it down, so I'm not going to be able to remember it now. But he did try to get over technical and wiggle around the words in a way of like, well, he didn't mean it like that or something. I do wish I wrote it down. I wrote everything else down, responses. And I let it be. I'm like, okay, he's a fundamentalist Christian. He's going to wiggle around. So I'm like, okay. So I say, well, let's start softball and then we'll get a little bit deeper on this. So, like I said, it was a interesting conversation. So I said, all right, let's talk about, the abuse of women. Now, some of these I know I've already shown. And there will be a couple I don't think I have yet. So 3, 17, and 18 on Numbers. So this is the next one I showed. I was like, okay, and just to make sure that nobody taking this out of context, Lord spake unto Moses. Now, obviously, I don't actually believe anything the Bible says. I don't think the Lord said. But for the sake of argument, people take this book serious. The Lord spake unto Moses, yada, 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 yada. And then here we go. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath been known by man by laying with him. But all the women, children, little girls, that have not been known by man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. So, you can pause it if you really want to read everything in between. Israel with the Midianites. So, what I had asked was, I told him, I said, well, I read that to him. He claimed that males and women had been, quote, corrupted. So, which that doesn't make any sense to me, but, I asked him, and again, I'm pulling this from some of the atheist channels. I don't know if this was specifically from Seth Andrews' book. But yeah, I said, what was the process of determining who was a virgin? I mean, that's, and the way that I asked him that, I was like, look, man, they're going through war. Like, they just killed their parents right in front of them. And any brothers, if they happen to have any. Like, are they doing this right then and there? I mean, it sounds like it, because you're only going to take the virgins home, right? There's no reason to take all the women home and then sort through. So, little girls are being tortured right in front of shortly after watching their parents die, or right in the mix of it. So he tried to back out of that, and he claims that a doctor determined, and he made it sound like there was some kind of civil thing going on, but come on, it's a war zone. Let's be real. So I let it slide because I had other points I wanted to pin him on. And again, I wasn't trying to unconvince him. You're not going to unconvince somebody that's a fundamentalist that's that age. Not likely. I don't want to say you can't, but anyway, my goal wasn't to deconvince him, just to get results. Like, to get his responses. Deuteronomy 20:13 through 4. So, now we're going to go to this one. Okay, so again, I listed I give him another example of the same thing. And then the Lord said, thy God hath delivered unto thine hands, thou shalt smite every male therefore with the edge of the sword, but women and the little ones and the cattle and all that is in the city, and even the spoil thereof shalt thou take upon thyself, and thou shalt eat with the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God. Now I know I've read this verse semi-recently, but in this case, I was trying to get to, like, there's still, they were still being taken advantage of and forced into slavery. And, God is the one, like, telling them to do this shit. Like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like love, compassion, or anything else to me. So yeah, I asked, where is the free will in this? And isn't this hostile? And his response was not forced, which I just mentally screamed BS. Women and children had no rights, according to what he said. And they were vulnerable and at risk. So basically, he was associating that, well, basically, women were just property, if we just say it straight out. Yeah, and he said women wasn't as important back then. So yeah, like, I don't know if I can. Obviously, I don't agree with any of this, but it's interesting how people will attempt to defend things sometimes. Let's see here. There's 23. Sorry, the camera's a little shaky here. Deuteronomy 23-1. So this is one that he said he's never heard of before, which is weird because if you're preaching that this book is God's love letter, you ought to have read this enough times. Anyhow, so I said, well, here's a weird one. I said, he that is wounded in the stones, which I'm guessing means balls, I don't know, or hath his privy member cut off, thou shalt not enter the congregation of the Lord. So I asked him about it. I'm like, well, that sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? That, if an accident happened or something, you're out in the field or whatever, and something happens, and you're dismembered from below in some sort, or maybe through war, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. You just die. I mean, not die, but you don't go to heaven or whatever. Like, that's kind of weird for a God to be that petty. I thought you're supposed to get a new body. So what is the difference? So his response was not sure, and he hadn't heard that one before. So I let it be. I mean, I don't really expect that most of these people have read their book. So, like, I'm not surprised, but I did throw them off guard. 1 Samuel 18:25-27. Okay, so this is going to take me a minute. I'm going to focus on here so you can read it yourself. You can read through that pink crap. So again, this is for like the weird stuff. I said, okay, well, here's another weird one. So 1 Samuel 25-27. And Saul said, thus shall ye say, David the king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And his servants told David these words. It pleased David to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Oh my God. I apologize. I didn't know that was going to happen. Random commercial. Anyhow. Damn. Phone. Trying to get this crap out of the way. The reason I'm so particular about getting this thing in correct focus, because I don't want no one saying I'm taking this shit out of context or I'm misreading it. This thing is really fucking stubborn, though. Half the time trying to get this fucker in focus. Here we go. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men slew the Philistines 200 men, and David brought their foreskins and gave them full tale to the king, that he may be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal and his daughter to wife. So, yeah, I asked him about that. I was just like, that's really fucking bizarre. What's with that? What's God's obsession with foreskin? Now that one, I'm going to admit, I stole the idea. I got the quote from Seth Andrews' book, but Aaron Ross picked this one apart, and it's pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, so his answer, his thesis, as he worded it, was God to Abraham to set Jews apart from everyone else, told him to circumcise all males. Then he also stated that Catholics have taken this out of context. It's supposed to separate who is the men of God and who isn't. So, that's all I have for this one. It's a little longer than I was expecting. But, unfortunately, there are no more talks with Mike. Because, one, he was busy, but two, I think after this, quote, polite discussion, he realized that not only was he not going to convince me of anything, but he was having to defend his position against undefendable ideas. Like, so, anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Until next time.